History often teaches us that the most profound victories are rarely announced with the roar of cannons or the sounding of trumpets. In the grand tapestry of human experience, true power frequently resides in the quietest corners of the room. We live in a world that tends to reward the loud, the forceful, and the visibly confident. Manipulative individuals understand this modern reality perfectly. They move through life like turbulent storms, using emotional pressure, confusion, and theatrical dominance to bend others to their will. They expect that to challenge them, you must meet them on their own chaotic battlefield. They anticipate raised voices, defensive arguments, and desperate attempts to reclaim control. But when they encounter the deeply empathetic and highly intuitive soul, they find themselves stepping into an invisible labyrinth. They face a different kind of resistance, a quiet, unwavering resilience that echoes the stoic endurance of a people who have survived the harshest winters of history. This is a story about the silent dismantling of psychological tyranny. To truly understand this quiet power, we can look to the spirit of the Korean Peninsula during its most trying eras. For decades, foreign occupations and devastating conflicts sought to erase the identity and break the will of a nation. Yet, the people did not always fight back with loud, reckless abandon. Instead, they survived through a profound, collective resilience, preserving their language, their culture, and their inner dignity behind closed doors. They cultivated a silent strength that no oppressor could touch. In the realm of psychology, individuals with deep intuitive empathy operate in much the same way. When an emotional manipulator enters their life, seeking to colonize their thoughts and drain their emotional resources, these intuitive souls do not immediately sound the alarm. They do not engage in petty warfare. Instead, they retreat into the sanctuary of their minds, observing the invader with a clarity that is both beautiful and formidable. The first subtle defense mechanism they employ is something deeply ingrained in the cultural fabric of emotional survival, an acute awareness of the unspoken atmosphere. Long before a manipulator launches their first overt attack, the intuitive mind is already gathering data. They possess an internal radar that picks up on the slightest atmospheric shifts in a relationship, a sudden change in vocal pitch, a fleeting shadow of malice behind a smile, or a pattern of subtle inconsistencies in a story. While most people take social interactions at face value, the intuitive observer feels the emotional pulse of the room. They sense hidden motives the way a seasoned farmer senses the drop in barometric pressure before a storm. The manipulator assumes their crafted illusions are working perfectly, completely unaware that their target is already mapping out their psychological traps. Because they detect these threats so early, they are rarely caught off guard when the manipulation finally surfaces. They do not react with shock or panic. Instead, they gently test their instincts. They might ask a seemingly innocent question, introduce an unexpected variable into the conversation, or momentarily change the subject just to observe how the manipulator attempts to wrestle back control. The manipulator's frustrated reaction becomes the absolute confirmation the intuitive person needs. By the time the psychological game officially begins, the intuitive mind has already deciphered the opponent's entire playbook. This early detection is an invisible shield. It protects their core identity from being swept away by the manipulator's fabricated reality, allowing them to remain firmly planted in the soil of their own truth. Once the threat is confirmed, the next crucial step is the deliberate withholding of vulnerability. Manipulators are emotional scavengers. They constantly hunt for personal secrets, past traumas, and deep-seated fears to use as leverage. They feign intimacy to extract these precious resources. However, the intuitive survivor knows that their inner world is a sacred territory. Much like rebuilding a shattered city after the devastation of war, where every brick and every resource must be fiercely guarded, they begin to construct a fortress around their emotional access points. They do not become aggressively hostile or obviously distant. They simply practice the art of selective openness. They will engage in polite conversation, discuss the weather, or talk about superficial matters, but they firmly lock the gates to their soul. This strategy starves the manipulator. Without fresh emotional fuel, the fires of manipulation cannot burn. The manipulator may push, prod, and attempt to provoke a passionate response, but they are met with a smooth, impenetrable surface. This creates a profound shift in the power dynamic. The manipulator is accustomed to pulling strings and watching their victims dance with anxiety or guilt. When those strings are suddenly cut, the manipulator begins to stumble in the dark. Their resulting frustration often causes them to act recklessly, revealing their true, toxic intentions to anyone who is paying attention. Meanwhile, the intuitive person rests safely behind their walls, conserving their precious energy for the days to come. When direct confrontation is unavoidable, the intuitive mind employs a tactic of profound grace. They become a calm mirror. Manipulators thrive in chaotic environments. They want you to scream, to cry, to lose your temper so they can point a finger and label you as the unstable one. It is a classic psychological trap. But the intuitive person refuses to step onto that stage. Instead, they listen intently, absorbing the frantic energy of the manipulator without internalizing it. When it is their turn to speak, they reflect the manipulator's words back to them in completely neutral, factual terms. They strip away the inflammatory language and hand the naked truth back to the aggressor. Imagine a manipulator exclaiming that you never care about their sacrifices, hoping to drown you in an ocean of guilt. Instead of defending your character, you calmly reply that it appears they are feeling unappreciated right now. By stating this as an observation, rather than an admission of guilt, you force the manipulator to take ownership of their own turbulent emotions. You step out of the line of fire. This calm reflection is incredibly disarming. It denies the manipulator the dramatic climax they so desperately crave. It is a quiet form of psychological aikido, using the attacker's own momentum to neutralize their strike, leaving them exhausted and bewildered by their own aggressive reflection. Beyond words, there is an even heavier weapon in the arsenal of the deeply empathetic mind. It is the masterful use of strategic boundaries and absolute silence. In traditional architecture, the layout of a classic courtyard house is designed with layers of privacy. There are public spaces for guests, but the innermost quarters are strictly forbidden to outsiders. The intuitive mind structures their relationships in the exact same way. When a conversation turns manipulative, they do not feel obligated to stay and endure the abuse. They set a boundary, clean, sharp, and without unnecessary apology. They may simply walk away, or better yet, they may just stop speaking. Silence is deeply uncomfortable for a manipulator. They are used to victims rushing to fill the void with excuses, compromises, or pleas for forgiveness. When the intuitive person lets the silence hang heavily in the air, the pressure shifts completely. The silence acts as a spotlight, illuminating the absurdity of the manipulator's demands. Desperate to escape the suffocating quiet, the manipulator will often backpedal, contradict themselves, or reveal their hidden agenda. The quiet defender does not need to lift a finger. They simply hold their ground, letting the heavy gravity of silence crush the false narrative. It is a powerful declaration that they are no longer a participant in the manipulator's twisted theater. Eventually, there comes a time when the truth must be spoken. But here again, the method is entirely different. There are no dramatic accusations, no shouting matches in the public square. They practice gentle truth disclosure. This is the act of waiting until the emotional storm has passed, and presenting the undeniable facts with cold, unwavering clarity. They do not attack the manipulator's character, they simply lay the evidence on the table. They point out the discrepancies between what was promised and what was delivered, between the memory of an event and the documented reality. They speak softly, but their words carry the weight of iron. Because this truth is delivered without venom or malice, it is completely undeniable. If the manipulator tries to deny it, they look foolish to everyone around them. If they accept it, they lose their power. By removing the emotional charge from the confrontation, the intuitive person ensures that the truth stands entirely on its own merit. It is like the sun rising over a frozen landscape. The light does not scream at the ice to melt. It simply shines with an unyielding presence until the ice has no choice but to vanish. The false reality built by the manipulator simply evaporates under the quiet, steady warmth of the absolute truth. The final, most devastating blow to the manipulator is not a single action, but a gradual, quiet realignment of power. It is the miraculous transformation of the internal landscape. Think of a nation that was once left in complete ruin, seemingly broken beyond repair. Yet, through decades of silent, relentless labor, through tears shed in private and hopes nurtured in the dark, that nation rises to become an economic powerhouse. The miracle on the Han River was not achieved by screaming at destiny. It was achieved by focused, quiet determination. The intuitive soul undergoes a similar miraculous recovery. They stop pouring their precious emotional energy into the endless, dark pit of the manipulator. Instead, they redirect that beautiful energy toward themselves and toward the people who truly love and respect them. They invest in healthy friendships, they nurture their own passions, and they build a life so rich and vibrant that the manipulator simply becomes irrelevant. They change the entire flow of the social dynamic. In group settings, people naturally begin to gravitate toward the calm, steady presence of the intuitive person, slowly turning away from the dramatic, exhausting orbit of the manipulator. The manipulator finds themselves isolated, not because they were loudly cast out, but because the world simply moved on without them. This quiet realignment leaves the manipulator entirely powerless. They search for the strings they used to pull, but those strings have been severed. They look for the fear they used to instill, but they find only peace and unbothered grace. The intuitive person has quietly reclaimed their territory, securing their borders and flourishing within their own soul. They did not have to sacrifice their core values. They did not have to become cruel to defeat cruelty. They simply woke up, recognized the game, and chose not to play. It is a victory that leaves no collateral damage, only the beautiful silence of a mind at peace. If you are someone who carries this quiet strength within you, know that your peaceful nature is not a weakness. It is your greatest armor. The world may celebrate the loud, but it is the quiet, intuitive resilience that survives the longest winters and builds the most enduring miracles. Trust your instincts, protect your sanctuary, and never feel ashamed of the boundaries you must draw. May you continue to walk with grace, knowing that you hold the power to quietly dismantle any storm that tries to shake your foundation. Thank you for joining us on this journey of the mind and spirit. May your days be filled with peace, clear vision, and unwavering strength.